Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Career Choice Series webinar on judicial law clerks. The Career Choice Series is designed to help you choose your career path, whether you're a law student, young lawyer, or transitioning attorney. Find out what it's like to work in various practice areas and the best way to position yourself to get there. The Career Choice Series is brought to you today by ABA Legal Career Central, Law Student Division, Young Lawyers Division, and the Government and Public Sector Lawyers Division. The Government and Public Sector Lawyers Division's mission is to serve the nation's public lawyers by promoting integrity and excellence among public advocates, providing meaningful services not obtainable elsewhere, and by highlighting the extraordinary work of public lawyers. GPSLD works to enhance the position of public lawyers, create camaraderie within the public sector, and provide representation within the ABA for public lawyers. The Young Lawyers Division is here to help new lawyers navigate the early years of their career and law students prepare for life after law school. The Law Student Division offers premium benefits, which includes a savings of $250 on Barbary Bar Review, $25 off West academic casebooks, and a legal ethics bundle that includes a free Model Rules of Professional Conduct ebook. Upgrade to premium for $25. Sign up today at abaforlawstudents.com/go premium. ABA Legal Career Central is a career center that offers both career development resources and a job board for law students, lawyers, and other legal professionals across all disciplines and career stages. Today's moderator is Liz Stone, Managing Director of the Dubin Group, a legal search firm based in the Bay Area. She's a former litigator and currently performs stand-up comedy at clubs throughout the country. She is the incoming chair of the ABA Legal Career Central Board. Liz, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Emily, and welcome everyone. I'm really excited about today's panel. I'd like to introduce our panelists. I'm pleased to introduce Veena Iyer, who is a shareholder at Nilan Johns Lewis in Minneapolis, and she focuses on labor employment law. Prior to joining the firm, she held 2 state clerkships in the Hennepin County District Court and Minnesota Court of Appeals, and she held a federal clerkship in the Northern District of Illinois. I'm also pleased to introduce Clayton LaForge, who is an associate in Washington, D.C. with Latham Watkins. He focuses on complex trial and appellate matters and white-collar investigations. Clayton joined Latham following clerkships in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit and the U.S. District Court for the District of Puerto Rico. Welcome, Veena and Clayton. I'm so excited that you guys are here today to talk about your experience as a judicial clerk. First of all, I'd like to start with an overview of being a judicial clerk. And Veena, I'd like to start with you. Can you give us an overview of your work?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you so much to the ABA for having me. What is great about a judicial law clerk experience is it's really an experience in which you just get to be the assistant to a judge, and in all ways. And so what that means is that you're really there with the judge as kind of their right-hand person, helping them to, in some instances, you're helping them with the scheduling of cases and scheduling of motions and matters. That's what I did more. I did some of that in my district court clerkship in state court. In addition, it's a lot of research and writing, particularly in all of my clerkships. I did a lot of work on both bench memoranda to help the judge get ready for a matter, as well as on the opinion writing for the decision that the judge was going to make. And finally, it really is a way in which you get to see a lot of whatever format you're in, whether you're a clerk in a state court, in a federal court, or even in several administrative bodies like the immigration court. What you're getting to do is learn and really better understand the real practice of law and expose yourself to a lot of practitioners in that area of law when you are a clerk.
Thank you. And Clayton, can you give us an overview of your work as a judicial clerk?
Yes, I was a law clerk for 2 years for a district court judge. The district court judge is really his own boss, and the law clerk drafts the opinions and orders, handles settlement conferences, works hand in hand with the judge to manage case dockets. So it's a great experience whether you want to go into government or into the private sector, because you're juggling quite a number of obligations at once, both clerical and managerial, as well as substantive. One of the other benefits is that the docket in a federal court is perpetually diverse, and so you're going to see almost anything that you could encounter, no matter where your career leads you. And the substantive gain of clerking in a district court is fantastic because you gain about an inch deep and a mile wide of experience in just about every topic. So if you're unaware of what you're interested in pursuing, clerking is a great thing to do, especially at the district court level. At the Court of Appeals level, you collaborate with other judges because most courts of appeals have 3-judge panels to resolve motions, and you learn a lot about the appellate practice generally. So if you're interested in specializing more in appeals work, a Court of Appeals is more optimal for starting your career.
Great. And I'd like to talk to you both about your career path and how you got into clerking. Clayton, can you tell us what your path was to your clerkship?
Yes, so I was a 2-year pre-law school workforce member and decided that I wanted to go back to law school, but still I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. Litigation generally was of interest to me, and I learned about clerking while I was in law school. So for those of you who aren't exactly sure what you want to do, but you enjoy being a lawyer and think you may want to go into litigation, I would certainly consider clerking. And you know, very, very briefly, and we may get into this more later, but there are 5 very brief points I wanted to share about getting into your path for judicial clerking. That's doing well generally academically, interning either with a federal judge or the U.S. Attorney's Office or a public defender. That's number 2. Number 3 is taking procedure classes and doing well in them. That's civil procedure and admin law and things like that. Number 4 is being on a law journal, and number 5 is trying to get published. So whether you're on the Law Review or some other journal, or whether you can get published in some capacity, it demonstrates that you are dedicated and intelligent and have the right kind of work ethic to a judge. So if you're able to do all those things in some regard, it's going to be helpful.
Great. And Veena, can you tell us about your career path to your clerkship?
Absolutely. And I'm a little bit unique in that I actually have clerked 3 times, and for different reasons both times. So I'll start with the first and then go on to my second 2 clerkships. As I was in law school, I, like Clayton, was very interested in litigation. Several people in law school had encouraged me to clerk because they said that it was a really fantastic way to improve your writing skills, to develop a relationship with a mentor who would really be with you throughout your career, and also particularly, if you could, to clerk in the area where you thought that you'd want to practice, because it was a way to really get to know people in the bar. And so that is how I decided to clerk, and I decided to apply in the federal district courts because I was particularly interested in getting to be exposed to trial practice. I applied very, very broadly because I knew that it was hard to get a federal district court clerkship, but I definitely focused on the Northern District of Illinois because that is where I intended to be for the rest of my life. And that's how I got my clerkship. And one thing I think that is interesting and important about the way I got my clerkship is that I ended up actually clerking for a judge who had been involved with the a clinic that I was in law school. It's a very it's a clinic where the alums are really, really into it. So one of the things I would also encourage you to do is if you're interested in becoming a clerk, and there are some connections to the judges that you know, either through bar associations, whatever, go to those events and get to know judges, because if they know you, it's going to help you in trying to get your clerkship. The second time I decided to clerk, actually it was not a part of my career path or an intentional part. I ended up planning to move to Minnesota, where I now live, because my husband got into grad school here. So I was making a career transition. It was at the height of the recession, and I knew that I was not going to be able to find probably a practice position immediately. So I thought that clerking, again, would be a great way to do a job that I had loved before and actually get to know the market that I was moving into, so that I could build relationships and start to find a place that I could have a permanent career. So that is how I ended up clerking here in Minnesota, first at the state district court level for a judge named Susan Burke, and then at the Minnesota State Court of Appeals for a judge who is now a justice on the Minnesota Supreme Court named Natalie Hudson. And those were fantastic experiences because I really got to know the local area better, and especially at the Court of Appeals, being a appellate clerk is a little bit different. It's a little bit headier. You're really working on the legal issues. You're at oral argument. You're not in trials every day. So that was a really, really fun and interesting experience for me. But particularly for me, trying to transition to a new market, these were fantastic opportunities because I got to meet tons of attorneys. My judges took me under their wing, took me to bar events, et cetera, introduced me around, and helped me to get to know people so that I could really try to figure out where I wanted to end up. And that's how and really my judges were part of how I ended up at my firm because they knew my firm, thought it was a great place, and encouraged me to get to know people here.
Excellent. And Veena, can you tell us about a day in the life of a judicial clerk?
Yeah, a day in the life, it's really interesting because I would say that at my federal district court clerkship and my state court of appeals clerkships, there were a lot of similarities in that it was a lot of research and writing. There would be at the federal district court level, there would be a motion that was before the judge. I would take on the motion. My co-clerk would take on. I took on the even number cases. He took on the odd number cases. And really, I would be sitting down, looking at the briefing, helping the judge come to a decision about a case, both through talking to him as well as doing my own research, and then helping to draft opinions that he would then review. At the Court of Appeals, very similar process, except that we also, prior to oral argument, would do a bench memo. And actually some district court judges do that as well. So a lot of research and writing, some hearings, and usually at least like a couple of hearings a week, but I wasn't in court all of the time. When it came to my state district court clerkship, on the other hand, there were a lot more trials. There were certainly trials in federal district court too, but a lot more trials in state district court. Still did a lot of the research and writing, but because state district courts, at least here in Minnesota, are a little bit more limited in resources, I also did a lot of, kind of scheduling for the judge, dealing with the parties on some discovery matters, kind of like getting some information before the judge addressed them. So it was a lot more interaction with people than I would say the other two clerkships were.
Very helpful. Thank you. And Clayton, can you tell us about a day in the life of a judicial clerk that you experienced?
Yes. So at the trial court level, the judge for whom I clerked was very hands-on with criminal matters. And the reason that you'll see a lot of district court judges be hands-on with criminal matters is because there are very tight timelines, both statutorily and constitutionally. So judges, especially at the federal level, have to be very attuned to their criminal dockets. And as a result, law clerks do a lot of civil work. So it's really good in terms of experience. If you are interested in being a civil litigator, really you can do anything. But civil litigators generally get the best experiences out of clerking, and my day-to-day there consisted of managing the case dockets, and by that I mean ensuring that the parties were complying with the federal rules of procedure, drafting opinions and revising them hand in hand with the judge, attending settlement conferences with the judge, and contributing where asked, sitting in on court, observing proceedings, and basically assisting the judge to ensure that his docket was run efficiently and fairly. At the Court of Appeals level, it's a little different because you have the three-judge panel or sometimes an en banc panel of all the judges for that particular Court of Appeals. You'll circulate bench memos like they do at the Supreme Court, and you'll discuss the case with the judge beforehand, and the oral argument will take place. You'll provide the judge with legal research and brief the judge, and then oral argument will take place. And afterwards, the three judges will discuss who will write which opinions and dole out those opinions to their law clerks respectively to draft, and they'll go through several iterations. The day in the life of a law clerk is fairly interesting because you're never going to have the same experience as your colleagues because your experience is based entirely on your judge. And the truth is that sometimes, just like in life anywhere, judges, you'll have nice judges, you'll have nice bosses, and sometimes you'll have judges who are a little more serious. So your day in the life on the personal side can be very different depending on how your judge likes to interact with his or her law clerks. And It just depends. So those are things that you can find out from colleagues or classmates who have interviewed or clerked for judges while you're in the interview process, if you're interested in having any insight into what the work-life balance, for example, is like as a clerk. So you're effectively a judge. Yeah, you're welcome.
Now, Clayton, can you tell us about some of the pros and cons of your experience as a judicial clerk?
Yes. So the pros that I think you're going to see in private practice are that you're prepared for almost anything at a mid to senior level of associate position when it comes to handling pure litigation. Instances in which I have encountered helpful occasions from my clerkships are plenty. Right now I'm doing various trial work matters and various appeals matters. Because I clerked at a court of appeals, I'm able to prepare our appeals team for Supreme Court and courts of appeals oral arguments and work on briefs for them. And because I've done a trial court clerkship, I have a little bit more experience with basic trial matters that senior associates may also be aware of, but junior associates may not. So the opportunities once you start at a law firm are a little bit more interesting. You come in also at an advanced level. The cons are, I would say that you do miss, if you come in as a second or a third year associate after clerking for a couple of years, you miss learning the firm culture, which you can make up for. You know, I would never sacrifice a clerkship for the sake of coming in as a first year. But it is something to be mindful of. You know, you want to hit the ground running when you get out. Other than that, you know, there aren't really any drawbacks to clerking, frankly, in my opinion, if you don't know what you want to do. And if you do know what you want to do and it's litigation, then there certainly aren't any drawbacks.
Great. And Veena, can you tell us about some of the pros you felt like you had as a clerk and some of the challenges that you faced?
Yeah. I agree with Clayton. I think that the pros much outweigh the cons. I mean, I think the biggest pros about clerking for me is that I learned to think better, I learned to write better, and I developed lifelong mentors. My judges to this day are people that I turn to when I am making difficult decisions in my career, and they are just wonderful sounding boards. I do consider them to be kind of on my personal board of directors, and which is really wonderful. On the con side, I'd say a couple of things that people should be aware of, which is that absolutely the money can be much less, especially than if you are going to be going to a large law firm where the money is much higher. I do think, though, that one of the things that's important is to think about clerking as an investment in that way, because I think that the awards that you will get long term, both financial and professional, will be much greater. But I am very sensitive to the fact that there are people on the line, and I have seen this where I'm really committed to and do some work here and trying to really increase the number of people of color who are in clerkships and are considering clerkships here. And one of the things I find for some members of that group, and just more generally for folks who are the first in their family to go to law school, who don't who have really relied on a lot of financial aid to go to law school, it can be really tough to have, after 3 years, have to spend a fourth year or a fifth year for some 2-year clerkships, earning a lot less than your potential. And so I would say for those of you who are earlier on in law school, trying to do some financial planning earlier on to make this a possibility is something I think that will practically make it possible. And for those of you who say to yourself, you know what, I've got to earn some money, I got to start paying down those loans, etc., absolutely understand it. Think about what I did, which is doing a clerkship later in your career. Because even if you decide you want to go back to your firm, I know plenty of people who have gone, clerked, and come back to their institutions, and frankly, they're very appreciative of people coming back with that experience.
Definitely. Great advice. And Veena, what would you identify as the top 3 skills for someone who wants to be a judicial clerk?
So I was thinking about that. They're both the skills that I think you should have, at least some of when you get there, and also what I think you learn. So I think the first thing is really great research and writing. As Clayton mentioned, I think a great way to get those skills is through a journal and through doing writing with some really excellent professors at your school. One of the things I would also think about, which could both help your research and writing, but also help you with getting a clerkship, is look online at the professors at your school and which of them actually clerked and may have actually clerked for judges or in areas that you're really interested in. See if you can do a writing project with those folks, because you can kind of kill two birds with one stone, getting the writing and research experience, but also perhaps getting a really great recommender and mentor to help you figure out the clerkship route. The second thing I think people should really have is diplomacy. Regardless of the clerkship you're in, you're going to have to be working with people within chambers, with your co-clerks, also with other attorneys. And so you want to be somebody who can be diplomatic and talking to people, dealing with issues, and I think also particularly with the judge. One of the things I think that my judges really wanted is somebody who could disagree with them and say to them sometimes, Judge, I know that you think this is the answer, but because of X, Y, and Z, I think this is the answer. And I think that judges really, really respect people who can disagree with them respectfully, because they want that. They want you to talk them off the ledge if they're about to go off of the ledge. But then also somebody who can, at the end of the day, say, I think this, Judge, I totally understand where you're going. And if the judge at the end of the day, they're the one that signs the order, they're the one that makes the decision. So somebody who can appreciate that decision and execute that decision in a respectful way is somebody that judges are going to really be looking for. Third, I think discretion is really important too, because judges talk about a lot of really important things in their chambers that really just can't get out to the public.
Got it. And Clayton, what would you identify as the top 3 skills?
I think that the 5 brief points that I touched on earlier about good grades, procedure classes, journal, things like that, are the skills you'll develop the necessary skills that you want to be there. But in terms of, sorry.
Yeah, I want to focus on the actual experience of being a clerk. So not to get the clerkship. So when you are actually clerking, what do you think the top 3 skills are for someone to have to be successful during their time as a clerk?
Sure. So, frankly, just use your common sense, and be normal in terms of how you would treat your friends and treat your family. You're the conduit to the world for a judge. You're already in the door because you possess the requisite legal research and writing ability, and your analytical skills are very sound. So the first and foremost important thing is use your common sense to assist the judge and be the judge's conduit to the world, because judges are very cloistered, and oftentimes, they're statutorily and constitutionally afforded a substantial amount of discretion, and they don't have time all day to read the internet and check social media and see what's going on in the world. So it's very likely that you could end up clerking for a judge who heavily relies on your take on what the world is like. That's first and foremost. Second is timeliness. Judges, every judge has his or her preferences as to when he or she likes to have something done. Some judges give you a lot of discretion and don't particularly mind as long as you get it done within a reasonable amount of time, and some do, and some are less clear about that. So I would figure out on day one what the judge's preferences are. And the third, and hands down the most important thing, and Veena touched on this, is collegiality. You're there not only because of your skills and your acumen that you demonstrated on paper and in your interview, but the judge saw something in you or sees something in you that makes that judge want to spend a year or two of his or her life with you. So at the very least, even if you absolutely don't like where you are, you should practice collegiality and make sure that you develop good relationships. And if that's not something that comes naturally to you, you should use it as a good opportunity to develop that.
Great, thank you. And Clayton, what would people be surprised to know about your experience as a clerk?
I didn't finish in the top 10% of my class, and I went to the University of Richmond Law School. So I didn't go to Harvard Law School, and I wasn't number one on the law review there. So that's how I still ended up getting a couple federal clerkships as a result. So the one, I guess, surprising thing, people these days may think, you only get clerkships if you're at the super top or if you go to an Ivy League law school. That's not true. You can do a bunch of things to get a clerkship. And in terms of what actually was the most surprising during my clerkships, I didn't realize how much judges really do rely on your insight, both practically and legally, on a day-to-day basis. You really do bear the weight of a federal docket when you're in trial court, and the judge is going to read your opinion, and if it's within the realm of reasonableness, he or she is going to sign off on it. It's not like you're going to deliberate for days and weeks. That's really what the Supreme Court is for. The federal dockets these days at the appeals and trial levels are so busy. So, you go in there and you just need to be ready to essentially issue law, and you need to be someone on whom the judge can rely. So those are my 2 points.
Great. And Veena, what would people be surprised to know about your experience as a clerk?
This is the surprise. I'm going to actually change it to not be my experience, though, because it was something I learned, which is that there is a clerkship for almost every single type of law. And I did really fairly traditional clerkships, both at the federal and the state level. But what I've really found was really fascinating is that for friends of mine who have not done kind of like the general litigation route that I went, both in my legal services career as well as here at my firm, is there are immigration clerks, immigration court clerks. You do it through applying for the Department of Justice's honors program. If you want to be a family lawyer, the thing is that there, at least here in Minnesota, especially in our bigger counties, there are judges who just specialize in family law cases. So you could try to find who are the family court judges in your area and apply just to those individuals. There are the Court of International Trade, I think that's based, I think, out of New York or DC. I think they have clerks. Friends of mine have gone and clerked at Supreme Courts abroad as well, in India, in South Africa. So one thing I would say is that I think a lot of people think about the clerkship experience and say, well, that's not exactly the type of law I want to do. Why should I do it? Well, I would actually flip the question for you and say, well, if I'd like to clerk and I'm interested in a particular area of law, maybe go out and find if there's a clerkship for you, because you'd be surprised. I bet there is.
Great, thank you. And Veena, final question for you before we have a couple questions from the audience. How has ABA involvement helped your career, your experience?
Yeah, I have had limited involvement with the ABA specifically, though it's I think a great organization. I have done a lot more at the local level with my local bar associations, both the Women's Bar Association here in Minnesota as well as the Asian American Bar Association here. And I think that all of those bar experiences are really wonderful because they get you a lot of substantive knowledge, really help you expand your network, which as an attorney is really, really key. If you end up being in a position where, like me, you're a business developer, you need to have connections. And frankly, even in my former life, when I was a legal services attorney, had I proceeded there, and frankly, I think I'll probably go back there one day to the private sector, having a wide-ranging network is going to be extremely important to fundraising for your organization and getting support for your organization. So I think there's, in a lot of ways, no better way to build that network among other attorneys than through bar associations like the ABA.
Great, thank you. And Clayton, same question for you.
I've had an opportunity to do some writing, which has been good for professional development as well as resume building. Some interesting issues that I've wanted to explore a little bit. I've been able to collaborate with some folks at the ABA and get my name out there a little bit. But also, I've had an opportunity to meet some judges and some practitioners in my area through various committee involvement. And I think it's been valuable because I found myself in situations where, in client matters where I've needed some insight or a referral, and anybody who might be able to help, I otherwise probably wouldn't have met. But for my committee work or through some of my collaborative efforts in writing. So it's good to get involved because your life can be a lot easier. There are several ways to climb a mountain sometimes, and doing it on someone else's back is usually the easiest way to do it. So, that would be that would be my plug for the ABA, is getting people to do your work for you. Nice way to connect.
No, but it is good. It is good to build a network. So we have a few questions from the audience. Now, for the audience, a number of you have sent in questions about deadlines and the procedure for applications, and I'm going to refer you to your Career Services Department because that is, you want to make sure you're getting the most up-to-date information. But I do have a question from someone who is starting their second year and has a clerkship starting and was wondering about the training that you got on the job. And if there's anything you need to do ahead of time to prep. And Clayton, I'll start with you. Can you tell us how you would recommend someone prepare for their clerkship and what they can expect in terms of training?
So if you already have a clerkship that you're going to be going into, then you're set in terms of training. You really don't need to take a specific class. I would advise procedure classes, civil rules of procedure level 2, if that exists, constitutional law, admin law. Those things will really pave the way. Employment litigation is something you'll see a lot. So if you really want to, have some insight into what you're going to see, that's great. But one of the things that I attended twice, once before my trial court clerkship and once before my Court of Appeals clerkship, it's called the Byrne Institute, and it's at Pepperdine. And if you're clerking for a federal judge, then you can receive a stipend to go essentially for free. There's a big grant given to Pepperdine on behalf of, I think it was Judge Byrne, where almost any federal law clerk who's incoming can apply for this. And it's not super well known. You have to kind of find that yourself. So in terms of doing prep, it's a 2 or 3 day seminar, and they put you up in a hotel in Santa Monica, and it's fantastic. So on the state level, I would just talk to a couple of people who are frequent practitioners, some prosecutors, district attorneys, things like that, to try to get the lay of the land. But really, I would enjoy your last couple of years of law school because you've clearly put in the work to get to the point where you have a clerkship at this stage. So have a lot of fun and make good connections with your law school classmates.
Great. And Veena, do you have anything to add to that about preparing for a clerkship that you already have?
You know what? No, I think one thing is that the clerkships will very much vary, I think, in the type of on-the-job training you get. But I would definitely say if you are not overlapping with the clerk that you're replacing, I would definitely try to find time to get lunch with them either right before or right after your clerkship, because that will be really, really, really useful information for you.
Great, thank you. Good question coming in about the clerkship interview. Veena, do you have any advice for prepping for an interview and what kind of questions you can expect?
Absolutely. So as far as preparations, one of the things that I did a lot of was, I got online, tried to get as much information as I could about my judge. If my judge had written, for example, my judges had written some recent, significant opinions. I tried to read them beforehand. Also, to the extent that I could, I knew people or knew people who knew people who had previously clerked for the judge or knew the judge. I tried to talk to those people beforehand in order to get a better sense of kind of what was important to them, so that I could make sure to highlight those things during my interview. But as far as the questions go, I found that there were a series of questions that folks always ask, which is, why do you want to clerk? Why do you want to clerk for me? Some judges are particularly interested in having somebody who is probably going to stay in the geographic area because they want to build a relationship with you. So if you are not from the area, have an explanation. And you tend to say, explain why. So for me, it was, why am I applying to clerkships in Minnesota when I haven't spent a day in my adult life here? So I was prepared to answer that question as well.
Great, thank you. So again, I'm getting a number of questions in about the nitty-gritty of applying, and I'm going to refer you guys to your career services departments. And I just want to note that even if you guys are practicing attorneys, you should still be able to consult with your career services department for really specific questions about the application process, and there is also a lot of information online. So one final question, and I also want to refer everyone to the other webinars that the ABA Legal Career Central has on networking and job applications and job interviews, do's and don'ts, which will also apply to a clerkship. But Veena, final question, do you have any recommendations for the on-paper part of your application? So your cover letter and resume, what would be, something that would make you stand out for a judge, or what people should try to focus on?
Yep. So the first thing is read the directions. Some judges just have a general direction, but some judges really say, have some specific requests or note that they are emphasizing certain things. So if they do, emphasize those things in your cover letter, emphasize those things in your resume. Second, and I can't state this enough, proofread, because judges are looking for people who are great writers, who have attention to detail. And the first place for you to demonstrate that is through your cover letter and your resume. So look at it 100 times, and then have your friends and family do the same thing.
Great. And Clayton, anything to add to that about the on-paper part of your application for your clerkship?
Yeah, I agree with the discussion about cover letters. They can't make you, they can only break you. Everybody's going to be a good writer, and there are formalities that you need to observe in how you craft your resume and how you draft a cover letter and a writing sample. And your career services office really should be able to provide you with a stock form for how to do that, so that you don't have to worry about that, because your the most important role for you shouldn't be in crafting those things. That's an element of your law school education that you're paying for. The most important thing for you is to just remain calm and enjoy your experience with interviewing with a judge. You get to chat with a federal judge. So, just demonstrating that you're a capable, intelligent person by acting exactly like you act when you're with your friends and family is the most important thing. But on paper, it's really hard to stand out. Your grades all speak for themselves. Judges know what to look for. So if you have a positive experience, I would highlight, or not literally highlight, but try to emphasize that as much as possible, in a prominent spot in your resume. But do be sure to go through thoroughly with your career services office the requisite steps, because if you don't do that, then it will be a flag.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just going to reiterate that for any job search, following directions is huge, and you guys should all definitely use your career services offices as much as possible. They will have a lot of great advice for you. So Veena and Clayton, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. That was fantastic and very helpful. And Emily, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thank you, Liz, and thanks, Veena and Clayton, for sharing your career paths and all that great insight into getting a judicial clerkship. And thank you all for attending today. Attendees, please be sure to check out our website at ambar.org/careers for upcoming career-related articles and webinars. There's recordings of past programs on our website now, and on your screen is our upcoming Career Choice Series webinar. And these are our upcoming Career Advice Series webinars. You can also connect with us on social media, and you can check out our About page to learn more about the board. Before you leave, please complete our short survey. Thank you again, and have a great day.